The 3,000-person venue watched curiously as Elvis stopped singing and brought the little girl on stage, but when Elvis placed his golden scarf on her shoulders and leaned into her ear, what that little girl whispered was so powerful that everyone in the venue started crying, and that moment became one of the most unforgettable moments in music history. The International Hotel in Las Vegas buzzed with electric anticipation on that warm September evening in 1973. Outside, the iconic neon lights of the Strip painted the desert sky in brilliant colors, while inside, 3,000 eager fans filled every seat of the grand showroom. The air was thick with excitement and the sweet scent of anticipation that only comes before witnessing a legend perform. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across burgundy velvet seats, creating an atmosphere of luxury and grandeur that befitted the king of rock and roll. Among the crowd sat 8-year-old Emma Rodriguez, her small hands clutching a handmade sign that read, "I love you, Elvis," in bright red crayon. The letters were slightly crooked, written with the careful concentration that only a child can muster when creating something truly important. Her foster mother, Mrs. Henderson, had saved for months to afford these front-row seats, working extra shifts at the diner and skipping her own small pleasures, knowing how much this moment meant to the little girl who had endured more heartbreak than any child should face. Emma's dark eyes sparkled with wonder as she took in the grandeur of the venue. She had never seen anything so magnificent. The massive stage loomed before her, bathed in golden spotlights that created an almost heavenly glow. Behind her, she could hear the excited chatter of thousands of fans, their voices creating a symphony of anticipation that made her heart race with nervous excitement. She wore her best dress, a bright blue number that sparkled with sequins Mrs. Henderson had sewn on specially for this night. It was Emma's first real dress, and she felt like a princess wearing it. The orchestra began their opening notes, and the crowd erupted into thunderous applause that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. But Emma remained still, her heart racing with nervous excitement, and something deeper, a longing she couldn't quite name. She had listened to Elvis's records countless times in her small bedroom at the foster home, imagining what it would be like to see him in person. She would close her eyes and pretend he was singing directly to her, that somehow through the magic of music, she wasn't alone anymore. Mrs. Henderson noticed Emma's stillness amidst the chaos and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Are you excited, sweetheart?" she asked, leaning down to speak directly into Emma's ear over the noise of the crowd. Emma nodded, but Mrs. Henderson could see something in her eyes, a vulnerability that broke her heart. This little girl had been through so much in her short life, bouncing from home to home, never quite finding a place where she truly belonged. Tonight was supposed to be magical, a night where Emma could forget about being different, about being unwanted, and simply be a child enjoying the music of her hero. When Elvis Presley stepped into the spotlight, the entire venue transformed. The energy shifted so dramatically that even the air seemed to crackle with electricity. Dressed in his iconic white jumpsuit adorned with golden eagles and rhinestones that caught the light with every movement, he commanded the stage with a presence that was both magnetic and humble. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his famous smile lit up his face as he surveyed the adoring crowd before him. His voice filled every corner of the massive room as he launched into "Love Me Tender," his signature warmth radiating through each note. The sound was rich and powerful, yet tender enough to touch the deepest corners of the human heart. Emma watched in absolute awe, her small body swaying gently to the rhythm. She had never seen anything so magnificent. The way Elvis moved, the way he connected with each person in the audience, made her feel as though he was singing directly to her, just as she had imagined in her bedroom. As Elvis continued his performance, moving through hits like Hound Dog and Can't Help Falling in Love, his seasoned performer's eye began to scan the audience. He had developed an intuitive ability over the years to read the crowd, to sense the energy and emotion flowing through the room. It was during It's Now or Never that something caught his attention, a stillness amidst the energetic crowd that seemed unusual. There, in the front row, sat a small figure who wasn't moving with the rhythm like everyone else around her. While thousands cheered and danced, this little girl sat transfixed, tears streaming down her cheeks as she absorbed every moment of magic unfolding before her. There was something about her reaction that touched Elvis deeply. He had seen thousands of emotional fans throughout his career, but something about this little girl's tears spoke to him on a level he couldn't quite explain. Elvis had grown up poor in Tupelo, Mississippi, and he understood what it felt like to be different, to feel left out, to dream of something bigger than your current circumstances. Looking at this child, he recognized something familiar in her expression, a longing that went beyond simple fandom. This was a little girl who needed something more than entertainment. She needed to feel special, to feel seen, to feel loved. Between songs, Elvis found his gaze returning to her again and again. He noticed how carefully she held her handmade sign, how her eyes never left his face, how she seemed to hang on every word he sang as if they were a lifeline. There was an innocence and purity in her attention that reminded him why he had fallen in love with performing in the first place, the ability to touch lives, to make people feel something beautiful and true. The seasoned performer had seen countless emotional fans throughout his career, but something about this little girl's reaction was different. It wasn't the hysterical screaming of teenage fans or the nostalgic tears of older admirers. This was something deeper, more profound. This was a child who seemed to understand that music could heal, that it could fill the empty spaces in a person's heart. As Elvis moved into the bridge of It's Now or Never, he made a decision that would change everything. He couldn't ignore what he was seeing. This little girl needed something more than a distant performance from a stage. She needed to know that she mattered, that she was seen, that someone cared about her tears. Midway through the song, Elvis suddenly stopped singing. His voice cut off mid-note, leaving only the instrumental track playing. The band, confused by their leader's unexpected pause, gradually trailed off one by one until silence filled the massive venue. 3,000 people fell into a hush, wondering what had captured the king's attention so completely. The silence was profound and immediate. In a venue designed for grand performances and thunderous applause, the sudden quiet was almost startling. You could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning, the rustle of programs, the quiet whispers of confused audience members. All eyes turned to Elvis, who stood center stage with his microphone in hand, his attention focused entirely on something in the front row. Elvis stepped closer to the edge of the stage, his blue eyes fixed on Emma with an intensity that made her look around nervously. She couldn't believe that Elvis Presley himself was looking directly at her. Her heart began to race even faster, and she instinctively shrank back in her seat, overwhelmed by the sudden attention. "Hold on just a minute, folks," Elvis spoke into his microphone, his voice gentle but carrying clearly through the silent venue. His tone was warm and reassuring, the same voice that had comforted millions through his recordings. "I see someone down here who looks like she might need a special moment." The crowd murmured softly, many standing on their toes to see what had caught their idol's attention. Some held up cameras, sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen. The atmosphere in the room shifted from entertainment to something deeper, more meaningful. This wasn't just a concert anymore. This was becoming something sacred. Emma looked around nervously, unsure if he was talking about her. Her eyes were wide with disbelief and a mixture of fear and hope. Mrs. Henderson placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, equally surprised by this unexpected turn of events, but sensing the importance of the moment. She squeezed Emma's hand gently, encouraging her to be brave. The spotlight operator, following Elvis's gaze, gradually illuminated the front row where Emma sat. The beam of light seemed to create a bridge between the superstar and the little girl, connecting them across the vast space of the showroom. Emma's tear-stained cheeks were now visible to the entire audience, and a collective awe rippled through the crowd as they saw this small, vulnerable child who had somehow captured Elvis's attention. "You with the beautiful sign," Elvis continued, pointing gently toward Emma with a smile that could have melted ice. "What's your name, sweetheart?" His voice carried all the warmth and tenderness that had made him beloved by millions, but in this moment, it was focused entirely on one small girl who needed to feel special. Emma's voice was barely a whisper when she first tried to speak. The words seemed to catch in her throat, a combination of nervousness and the overwhelming realization that her hero was actually talking to her. The massive venue seemed to lean in, waiting for her response. "Emma," she finally managed to say, her small voice somehow carrying through the hushed auditorium despite its softness. The acoustics of the venue, designed for grand performances, now served to amplify this intimate moment between a superstar and a child. "Emma," Elvis repeated, as if he was tasting the name and finding it beautiful. His famous smile grew even warmer, and those closest to the stage could see genuine affection in his eyes. "That's a beautiful name for a beautiful little girl. How old are you, Emma?" 8, she replied, her confidence growing slightly as she realized that this incredible moment was really happening. Around her, other audience members leaned forward, drawn into this unexpected drama that was unfolding before their eyes. Some wiped away tears of their own, moved by the tenderness they were witnessing. Mrs. Henderson, recognizing the significance of this moment and wanting Elvis to understand Emma's situation, leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Presley," she called out respectfully, her voice carrying the dignity of someone who had dedicated her life to caring for children who needed love. "This little angel has been through more than most children her age should ever have to endure. She's been waiting for this night for months, saving every penny from her small chores to help pay for these tickets." The impact of these words on Elvis was visible to everyone watching. His expression deepened with understanding and compassion, and those closest to the stage could see his eyes beginning to glisten with emotion. Throughout his career, he had always been drawn to stories of struggle and perseverance, perhaps because his own journey had been marked by hardship and determination. Elvis knew what it was like to want something so badly it hurt, to work for every small step toward a dream. Hearing that this little girl had saved her own money, penny by penny, to be here tonight touched something deep in his heart. This wasn't a child whose parents had casually bought expensive tickets. This was someone who understood the value of dreams and was willing to work for them. "Is that right, Emma?" Elvis asked, his voice now carrying a note of admiration along with the tenderness. "You saved up for these tickets yourself?" When Emma nodded shyly, Elvis felt his heart swell with respect for this determined little girl who had worked so hard for this moment. The audience began to murmur with appreciation and emotion as they understood the full picture. Here was a foster child who had sacrificed to be here, and now their idol was giving her the attention and recognition she deserved. Many parents in the crowd found themselves thinking about their own children, about the importance of dreams and determination. "Well, Emma," Elvis said, his voice carrying across the silent venue with newfound determination, "I think someone as special as you deserves a better view of the show. What do you say we get you up here with me?" The words hung in the air for a moment before their full meaning hit the audience. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd as people realized they were about to witness something truly extraordinary. The security team, well versed in Elvis's spontaneous gestures of kindness, immediately understood their role. They began moving toward Emma with respectful efficiency, but Elvis raised his hand to slow them down. "Take your time," he instructed, his voice gentle but clear. "This young lady deserves to have this moment done just right." He understood that for Emma, this wasn't just about getting a better seat. This was about feeling valued, chosen, and special. Mrs. Henderson looked at Emma with tears in her eyes, squeezing the little girl's hand one more time before releasing it. "Go on, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "This is your moment." The elderly woman had seen many children come and go through her care, but she had never seen anything quite like this. She knew she was witnessing something that would change Emma forever. Emma stood slowly, her legs trembling slightly with nervous excitement. The handmade sign fluttered in her small hands as she looked up toward the stage where Elvis waited patiently, his encouraging smile making her feel brave enough to take the first step. The distance between her seat and the stage suddenly seemed immense, but Elvis's presence made it feel like the most natural journey in the world. Around her, the audience began to softly applaud, their clapping gentle and encouraging rather than boisterous. They understood they were witnessing something sacred, a moment where kindness and love were taking center stage. Many found themselves thinking of their own children, their own childhood dreams, and what it would mean to be chosen by their hero. As Emma made her way toward the stage, guided by the gentle security personnel, every step seemed to resonate through the massive venue. The audience watched in hushed reverence, many wiping away tears as they witnessed this small girl's journey from the shadows to the spotlight. Her foster mother stood with her hand over her heart, knowing that this moment would live in Emma's memory forever. The walk to the stage, which normally would have taken less than a minute, seemed to stretch into a beautiful eternity. Elvis remained at the edge of the stage, his attention focused entirely on Emma, offering constant encouragement with his smile and gentle nods. The band members behind him watched with their own eyes misting over, many of them fathers themselves who understood the significance of what their leader was doing. When Emma reached the steps leading up to the stage, Elvis himself came down to meet her halfway. This gesture, the king of rock and roll descending from his throne to greet a child, sent another wave of emotion through the crowd. He extended his hand to her with the same respect he might show to any honored guest, treating her not as a charity case or a publicity opportunity, but as someone genuinely worthy of his attention and and care. "There you are," Elvis said softly, as Emma placed her small hand in his much larger one. "I was wondering when you were going to come see me up close." His words were perfectly chosen to make Emma feel not like she was being rescued, but like she was exactly where she belonged. The natural ease with which he spoke to her revealed the genuine warmth that existed beneath his superstar persona. Together they climbed the final steps to the stage, Elvis adjusting his pace to match Emma's smaller steps. When they reached the top, the full magnitude of the moment hit everyone present. Here was Elvis Presley, at the height of his fame and power, choosing to share his stage with a foster child who had saved her pennies to see him perform. The stage lights, which had seemed so bright and intimidating from the audience, now felt warm and welcoming. Emma found herself standing in the center of the massive stage, surrounded by instruments and equipment she had only seen from a distance. The audience stretched out before her like a sea of faces, all focused on her with expressions of warmth and encouragement. Elvis knelt down beside her, bringing himself to her eye level with the practiced ease of someone who understood how to connect with children. His white jumpsuit caught the stage lights, making him seem almost ethereal, but his eyes were completely human, filled with genuine care and affection. "You know what, Emma?" Elvis said, his voice low enough that only she could hear his next words, though his actions spoke volumes to everyone watching. "I think you're pretty special, and I want everyone here to know just how special you are." He stood up and adjusted his microphone, his arm naturally falling around Emma's shoulders in a gesture that looked as natural as if she had always belonged there. The sight of the king of rock and roll protecting and cherishing this small foster child created an image that would be burned into the memories of everyone present. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elvis announced to the crowd, his voice filled with genuine pride, "I'd like you to meet my friend Emma. She's got more courage in her little finger than most grown-ups have in their whole body, and she's going to help me with the next song." The thunderous applause that followed was filled not just with excitement, but with genuine emotion, as 3,000 people witnessed an act of pure kindness that transcended entertainment and touched the realm of the sacred. The standing ovation seemed to go on forever, with people cheering not just for Elvis, but for Emma, recognizing her role in creating this beautiful moment. What happened next would become the stuff of legend, a moment that would be talked about for decades to come. Elvis began to sing "Love Me Tender," but this time it was different from any performance he had ever given. His voice carried an extra layer of emotion, as if he was singing not to an audience of thousands, but to his own child. Emma stood beside him, no longer crying tears of sadness, but glowing with a happiness that seemed to radiate light throughout the entire venue. Her transformation was visible to everyone, from a lonely foster child sitting in the darkness to a beloved daughter standing in the spotlight, claimed and cherished by one of the most famous men in the world. As Elvis sang, he would occasionally lean down to Emma, encouraging her to sing along with gentle nods and warm smiles. Her small voice, though barely audible above the music, blended beautifully with his famous baritone. The sight of the king of rock and roll sharing his stage with a foster child, treating her with such genuine love and respect, moved many in the audience to tears of their own. The band, understanding the significance of the moment, played with extra tenderness. Even the seasoned musicians who had performed with Elvis countless times and had seen him touch many lives, seemed moved by what they were witnessing. The saxophone player wiped his eyes during his solo, and the drummer found himself playing softer than usual, as if he didn't want to disturb the sacred nature of what was unfolding. During the instrumental bridge, Elvis spoke to the crowd while keeping Emma close, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder. "You know, folks, sometimes we meet people who remind us what's really important in life. This little lady here has shown me more courage tonight than I've seen in a long time. She saved her own money to be here penny by penny, and she's got a heart bigger than this whole state of Nevada." For the next 30 minutes, Emma remained on stage with Elvis, becoming an integral part of the show in a way that felt completely natural and unforced. When he performed "Can't Help Falling in Love," he dedicated it to all the children who need to know they're loved, especially the ones who feel forgotten. The dedication brought fresh tears to the eyes of parents in the audience, many of whom made silent vows to love their own children more intentionally. As the concert neared its climax, Elvis made one final gesture that would cement this night in the hearts of everyone present for the rest of their lives. He reached up and slowly removed his iconic golden scarf, the same one he had worn for countless performances, the one that had become as much a part of his image as his voice itself. The scarf was beautiful, made of the finest silk and embroidered with golden threads thread that caught the stage lights and seemed to glow with its own inner fire. It had been with Elvis through triumph and struggle, through the highest peaks of his career. To those who knew him well, that scarf was more than an accessory. It was a piece of his soul, a symbol of everything he had worked for and achieved. With infinite care, Elvis placed the golden scarf around Emma's small shoulders. The fabric, still warm from his body and carrying the faint scent of his cologne, settled around her like a royal mantle. The golden thread caught the stage lights and seemed to transform Emma from a foster child into someone precious and chosen. "This is for you, daughter," Elvis said simply, and the word daughter rang through the venue with the same power as his most famous songs. The way he said it, with such conviction, such tenderness, such finality, made it clear that this was not just a momentary kindness, but a permanent claim. The impact of that single word was profound and immediate. Emma looked up at Elvis with wonder, her small face reflecting the dawning realization that she was being claimed, chosen, embraced by someone who could have had anything or anyone, but who chose her. For the first time in her young life, she felt what it might be like to have a father who cherished her, who saw her worth, who called her his own. Emma touched the scarf with reverent fingers, understanding somehow that she was receiving more than just a piece of fabric. She was receiving a symbol of belonging, of being chosen, of being unconditionally loved. The golden silk felt like magic against her skin, and she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The final song began, "Can't Help Falling in Love," but this time it was different from any performance Elvis had ever given. With Emma standing beside him, wearing his scarf and beaming with joy, he sang with a depth of emotion that moved even his most seasoned band members to tears. Every word seemed to be directed not just to the audience, but to this little girl who had captured his heart so completely. As the last notes faded and the audience gave a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever, Elvis knelt down one more time to hug Emma. The embrace lasted several long moments, and in that time, everyone in the venue understood that they had witnessed something truly magical. Not just a concert, but a moment of pure love and human connection that would live in their memories forever. When they finally separated, Emma looked up at Elvis with tears of joy streaming down her face. "Thank you, Daddy," she whispered, the word coming naturally from her heart. Elvis's eyes filled with tears as he realized the profound impact this night had had on both of them. In calling him Daddy, Emma had given him a gift as precious as any he had given her, the chance to be a father to someone who desperately needed one. The standing ovation continued for nearly 10 minutes with people cheering not just for the music, but for the display of human kindness they had witnessed. As Elvis helped Emma down from the stage and back to her seat, the entire front section of the audience stood to applaud her as well, recognizing her role in creating this unforgettable moment. Mrs. Henderson embraced Emma tightly when she returned, both of them overwhelmed by what had just transpired. The golden scarf remained around Emma's shoulders, a tangible reminder that this incredible night had actually happened. Around them, other audience members reached out to touch Emma's hand or offer words of encouragement, as if some of Elvis's magic had transferred to her. In the days that followed, the story of Elvis and Emma spread far beyond the walls of the International Hotel. Newspapers picked up the story, radio DJs talked about it on their shows, and fans who had been there that night called friends and family to share what they had witnessed. But for those who were present, no retelling could capture the full emotional impact of seeing the king of rock and roll become a father figure to a child who needed it most. True to his word, Elvis's people contacted Mrs. Henderson the very next day. Not only did they arrange for Emma's school expenses to be covered, but they also set up a trust fund to ensure her future education. Additionally, Elvis arranged for Emma and Mrs. Henderson to have permanent seats at any of his Las Vegas shows, treating them truly like family. The impact on Emma was immediate and lasting. The shy, often sad little girl was transformed. She walked taller, smiled more, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly valued. The other children at the foster home looked at her with new respect, and Mrs. Henderson noticed a confidence in Emma that hadn't been there before. Years later, Emma would often speak about that night and how it changed her life. She kept Elvis's scarf in a place of honor in her room, and whenever she faced difficulties or felt alone, she would touch it and remember his words, "You are special, you are loved, and you deserve all the good things in life." The story became part of Elvis's legend, but more importantly, it became an inspiration to countless others. Fans who heard about that night were motivated to reach out to children in their own communities, to look for ways to make a difference in young lives. lives. Foster care organizations reported an increase in inquiries from people wanting to help, all citing Emma's story as their inspiration. For Elvis himself, that night represented everything he valued most about his fame and success, the ability to touch lives and make a real difference. He often spoke about Emma in interviews, always with visible emotion, and he never missed an opportunity to encourage others to look out for children who needed extra love and support. The bond between Elvis and Emma continued long after that magical night. He would call her on her birthday each year, send Christmas presents, and whenever he was in Las Vegas, she and Mrs. Henderson would attend his shows. Each time he would acknowledge her from the stage, calling her his little daughter, and the audience would erupt in knowing applause. This beautiful relationship continued until Elvis's death in 1977. Emma, now 16, was devastated by the loss of the man she had come to think of as her true father. At his funeral, she wore the golden scarf he had given her, and those who knew their story understood the significance of that gesture. The story of Elvis and Emma continues to inspire people decades later because it represents the very best of human nature, the willingness to see beyond ourselves and reach out to those who need love and support. In a world that can often seem cold and disconnected, their story reminds us that simple acts of kindness can have profound and lasting impact. Emma grew up to become a social worker, dedicating her life to helping other children in foster care. She established the Golden Scarf Foundation in Elvis's memory, providing resources and support to foster children across the country. Her mission statement, inspired by Elvis's words to her that night, reads, "Every child deserves to know they are special, they are loved, and they deserve all the good things in life." That night in Las Vegas, 3,000 people came to see a concert, but they witnessed something far more precious. They saw love in action. They saw a man at the height of his fame take time to care for one small girl who needed to feel special. They saw the transformative power of kindness and the lasting impact of treating someone with dignity and love. The magic of that night wasn't in the music, though it was beautiful. It wasn't in the famous performer, though he was legendary. The magic was in the connection between two human beings, one who had everything the world could offer and one who had very little, and how love bridged that gap to create something truly beautiful. Years have passed since that extraordinary evening, but the story of Elvis and Emma continues to touch hearts and inspire acts of kindness around the world. It reminds us that the most powerful force on earth isn't fame or fortune, it's love, freely given and joyfully received. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, we get to witness that love in action, and it changes not just the lives of those directly involved, but everyone who is privileged to see it happen. But the story of that magical night was far from over. As word spread about what had happened at the International Hotel, something beautiful began to unfold across the country. Television news programs picked up the story, and within days, footage of Elvis placing his golden scarf around Emma's shoulders was being broadcast into living rooms across America. The image became iconic, a symbol of compassion in action and the power of love to transcend social boundaries. The response was overwhelming. The International Hotel was flooded with calls from people who wanted to know more about Emma's story, from families offering to adopt foster children, and from organizations requesting Elvis to support various children's charities. But perhaps most remarkably, other children began writing letters to Emma, sharing their own stories of feeling different or alone, and thanking her for showing them that dreams really could come true. One letter came from a young boy in Ohio who had been born with a physical disability. He wrote, "Dear Emma, I saw you on TV with Elvis, and it made me believe that maybe someone special will notice me too someday. Thank you for being brave." Another came from a girl in Texas whose parents had recently divorced. "Emma, when I saw Elvis call you daughter, it made me cry happy tears because I know how it feels to need someone to love you like that." Emma, with Mrs. Henderson's help, began responding to these letters. What started as a simple thank you note turned into lengthy correspondences with children across the country. Elvis, when he learned about this, was deeply moved. "That little girl is spreading more love than I ever could," he told his manager. "She's becoming an inspiration just by being herself." The media attention brought unexpected opportunities. A children's book publisher approached Mrs. Henderson about writing Emma's story for young readers. A television producer wanted to create a special documentary about foster children, with Emma as the central figure. But perhaps most significantly, several major corporations reached out offering to sponsor programs for foster children, all citing Emma's story as their inspiration. Elvis himself was profoundly changed by the experience. In interviews following that night, he would often redirect conversations away from his own career to talk about children like Emma who needed support and love. "You know," he said in one memorable television interview, "I've had a lot of great nights on stage, but nothing, and I mean nothing, has ever meant as much to me as that moment when Emma called me Daddy. That's when I really understood what being successful is all about." This new perspective influenced his music as well. His next album included a song called "Every Child Deserves a Dream," which he dedicated to Emma and all foster children. The proceeds from the song went directly to foster care organizations across the country, raising millions of dollars for programs supporting children in need. The golden scarf itself became something of a legend. Photos of Emma wearing it appeared in magazines and newspapers worldwide, and it became a symbol of hope for children everywhere who felt forgotten or unwanted. Elvis had several replica scarves made, which he would give to other children during his performances, but everyone knew that Emma's was the original, the one that started it all. As months passed, Emma's life continued to transform in ways both large and small. Her confidence in school improved dramatically, and she began participating in activities she had never dared try before. She joined the school choir, inspired by her moment on stage with Elvis, and discovered she had a beautiful voice of her own. Her grades improved as well, as she began to believe in her own worth and capabilities. Mrs. Henderson watched these changes with amazement and gratitude. "It's like that night flipped a switch inside her," she told a reporter who came to interview them 6 months later. "Emma always had potential, but she didn't believe in herself. Now she knows she's special, and it shows in everything she does." The relationship between Elvis and Emma continued to deepen. During one of his calls to her, Emma mentioned that she was struggling with a particularly difficult math concept at school. To her amazement, Elvis spent 30 minutes on the phone helping her work through the problems, patiently explaining the concepts until she understood. "Even my teachers don't take that much time with me," Emma told Mrs. Henderson afterward, still hardly believing that Elvis Presley had helped her with homework. When Emma's birthday approached that year, Elvis didn't just send a gift. He arranged for her entire class to attend one of his rehearsals in Las Vegas. The children were transported by private bus, given a backstage tour, and treated to a private 30-minute performance. But the highlight for Emma was when Elvis introduced her to his band and crew as "My Daughter Emma," making it clear to everyone that their relationship was genuine and lasting. The other children in Emma's class were initially awed by her connection to Elvis, but they soon realized that the experience had made Emma more compassionate, not more arrogant. She began organizing fundraisers at school for other foster children, using her story and her connection to Elvis to raise awareness and money for children in need. One particularly moving moment came during a school assembly where Emma was speaking about the importance of kindness. A shy boy in the back row raised his hand and asked, "Emma, what did you whisper to Elvis that night? Everyone wants to know." Emma smiled and said, "I told him thank you for making me feel like I belong somewhere. And you know what?" He whispered back, "You belong everywhere, daughter. Don't ever forget that." The impact of that night extended far beyond Emma's personal transformation. Mrs. Henderson's foster home became something of a model for other facilities, as social workers came to study the environment that had produced such a confident, caring young person. Mrs. Henderson began speaking at conferences about the importance of supporting children's dreams, no matter how impossible they might seem. The story also influenced policy at the state level. Legislators who had heard about Emma's experience began pushing for increased funding for foster care programs and better support for children aging out of the system. One senator specifically mentioned Emma's story during a floor speech advocating for educational scholarships for foster children. Elvis himself established the Emma Foundation 2 years after that magical night, dedicated to providing educational opportunities and emotional support for foster children. The foundation's first scholarship recipients included Emma herself, who used the funds to attend a prestigious private high school where she excelled academically and continued her advocacy work. The annual scholarship ceremony became a tradition, with Elvis personally presenting awards to deserving foster children. Each recipient received not just financial support, but also a replica of the golden scarf and a personal letter from Elvis encouraging them to pursue their dreams. The ceremony was always emotional, but perhaps none more so than the first one, where Emma, now 10 years years old, helped present the awards alongside her daddy Elvis. As Emma grew older, she began to understand more fully the broader implications of what had happened that night. She realized that her story had become bigger than herself, that it represented hope for millions of children who felt forgotten or unwanted. This understanding came with both pride and responsibility, and she embraced both with the wisdom of someone much older than her years. During one of their regular phone conversations, Emma asked Elvis a question that showed her growing maturity. "Daddy Elvis, do you think what happened to us was just luck, or do you think it was meant to be?" Elvis was quiet for a long moment before answering. "Emma, sweetheart, I think the universe has a way of bringing together people who need each other. You needed someone to show you how special you are, and I needed someone to remind me why I do what I do. Maybe that's not luck. Maybe that's love." The bond between them remained strong right up until Elvis's death in 1977. Emma, now 16 and a poised young woman, spoke at his memorial service, wearing the golden scarf and delivering a tribute that brought the entire gathering to tears. "Elvis taught me that love isn't about being related by blood," she said. "Love is about choosing to see someone's worth and helping them see it too. He chose me that night, and that choice changed everything, not just for me but for thousands of children who have been inspired by our story." After Elvis's death, Emma could have retreated from the public eye, but instead she chose to carry forward his legacy of compassion. She established her own foundation while still in college, focusing specifically on helping foster children develop confidence and pursue their dreams. Her motto, inspired by Elvis's words to her, became, "Every child deserves to feel chosen." Decades later, when Emma is now a grandmother herself, people still approach her to talk about that night in Las Vegas. The story has been told and retold countless times, adapted into books and movies, and studied by psychologists as an example of how a single moment of genuine human connection can transform lives. But for Emma, the most important legacy of that night isn't the fame or the foundations or the money raised for charity. It's the simple truth that love, when offered freely and genuinely, has the power to change everything. Every child she has helped through her foundation, every foster family she has supported, every young person she has mentored, they are all part of the ripple effect that began with a superstar's decision to stop his concert and notice a crying child. In the end, that's what made Elvis truly the king. Not his voice, not his fame, but his heart. And on that magical night in Las Vegas, his heart found its perfect match in a little girl who just needed someone to call her daughter. Their story continues to inspire new generations, proving that sometimes the most powerful force in the world is simply choosing to care about someone who needs to know they matter.